Hi, Assalamualaikum and very good evening to our Professor Surveyor Haji Rosan Afendi. I'm Nadira Zulkifli and my friends Nur Fatiha and also Musliha gonna present on managing cultural differences in international project, especially in Middle East.
Assalamualaikum and a very good day to everybody. My name is Fatiha. So now we are going to proceed with the objective of the study. So the purpose of the study conducted is to identify the cultural differences dimension in international construction project. And this study scope and limitation is limited to the construction players who have an experience work in a Middle East country. The reason why we choose Middle East country because there's a lot of nation who have an opportunity to work in the Middle East. So first, what is culture? So culture is basically is a human adaptations to circumstance and transmitting the copying skills and knowledge to subsequent generations. This culture will impact on the human behavior, moral, productivity, values and also pattern that will influence the company or an organization's attitude and also action. So there is 10 element that forming culture. First is the sense of self and space. So this is the ability of a person to identify and feel about themselves. It depends on the environment, also their surrounding. Second is communication and language. Communication can be verbal or non-verbal in a group of people, and language it can be dialect, accent, or jargon. Next is a dress and appearance, or we can call it as a dress code. For example, Japan wear kimono, Korean wear hanbok, Malaysian wear baju kurung. That dress and appearance that will forming the culture. Next is the food intake. Food intake is a food manner starting from the selection of food, preparations, presentation, and also eat procedure. For example, Muslim don't eat pork, Hinduism don't eat beef, and for Chinese they use chopstick to eat, and Western use knife and fork. That's the example. Next is the time and time consciousness. There is a culture that prioritize the punctuality of time. There's also agriculture that more flexible towards time. Next is the relationships. There are culture that honor the younger, honor the old, honor the older people, and there's also culture that differentiate between men and also women. Next is the value and norms. This will develop a standard for ethic or pleasure to absolute obedience. Next is the belief and attitude. This is depends on the view of religion, and this element is majority the big impact on the culture, on the forming the culture. Next is the mental process and also learning. So for certain culture, they learn um, culture by punishment. And lastly is the work habit and practice. Is an attitude towards work. It depends on the type of work, division of work, habit, work habit and also practices that been practiced. For example, promotion or incentive. That's some of the example. So for this study, we are using qualitative method by using snowball sampling. So for snowball sampling, um, they more effective for research that related to hidden communities, an issue that are difficult to express and clearly are not visible, communication issues and so on. So this approach is by using this approach, there are several potential of respondent were contacted um, and asked if they knew any other person with such characteristic or research purpose.
Hosted cultural dimension. The theory was developed by Great Hosted, used to understand the differences in culture across countries and to discern the ways that business is done across different cultures. This theory is one of the most accepted, especially when it relates to international issues. Number one, power distance is an expression of who takes control on the others. It has been defined to which less powerful member of the organization accept and expect that power is distributed unequally. A member of society with a high degree of power distance accept a hierarchical order in which everybody needs no further justification. The country that high degree in power distance is the culture accept inequity and power differences, encourages bureaucracy and shows high respect for rank and authority. Countries that high in power distance such as Belgium, France, Argentina, Brazil, Peru, China, India, Thailand, Indonesia and also Malaysia. Meanwhile, a member of society with low degree of power distance strive to equalize the power distribution and demand justification for inequalities of power. There is no dependency on powerful people and organization structure is more decentralized. Low power distance performing more proactive. A culture encourages organizational structures that are flat and feature decentralized decision-making responsibility, participative style of management, and place emphasis on power distribution. Furthermore, a country with low power distance includes most of the richest nations in the world such as USA, Canada, Germany, Italy, Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom and the European countries. Number two, individualism versus collectivism. This dimension considers the degree to which societies are integrated into groups and their perceived obligation and dependence on groups. Individualism indicates that there are greater importance placed on attaining personal goals. A person's self-image in this category is defined as I. Individualism refers to a society in which the relationship between people and loose. Countries that high in individualism such as France, Argentina, Brazil, Spain, USA, Canada and New Zealand. On the other hand, countries that low in individualism such as Pakistan, Taiwan, Thailand, India, Singapore and also Malaysia. Collectivism indicates that there is a greater importance placed on the goals and well-being of the group. A person's self-image in this category is defined as we. Collectivism refers to a society in which individuals from birth onwards are incorporated into large, unified communities that continue to defend them in return for unquestioning loyalty across people's life. Number three, uncertainty avoidance. This dimension describes how well people can cope with anxiety and how cultures differ on the amount of tolerance they have of unpredictability. A high uncertainty avoidance indicates low tolerance for uncertainty, ambiguity, and risk-taking. Examples of countries with high uncertainty avoidance scores include Italy, Korea, Mexico, Belgium, Russia, Germany, Greece, Guatemala, Japan, Mexico, Portugal, and South Korea. A low degree uncertainty avoidance indicates a high tolerance for uncertainty, ambiguity, and risk-taking. Example for countries with low uncertainty avoidance such as United States, England, India, China, and Singapore. Number four is masculinity versus femininity. This dimension is also referred as tough versus tender and consider the preference of society for achievement, attitude towards sexuality, equality, and behavior. Masculinity comes with the following characteristic: distinct gender roles, assertive and concentrated on material achievement and well-being. The highest ranking countries for masculinity are Japan. The other one is Hungary, Austria, Venezuela, Italy, and Italy. For high masculinity implies the absence of femininity and vice versa. In terms of Middle East versus Malaysia, the power distance, Malaysia scores at 100 while Middle East country score at 90 to 95, which both countries high in power distance level. They apply a hierarchy organization style inherent in equalities. Most organizations in Malaysia values high formalization, which creates among upper and lower level staff. And in terms of problem solving behavior, they put ultimate decision making authority to the higher level management over their subordinates. In terms of individualism and collectivism, score of 26 for Malaysia and Middle East is 37. This is expressed in a near long-term attachment to the member of community, whether it is a family, extended family or extended connections. Number three is uncertainty avoidance. Malaysia's score is 36, quite low actually, and Middle East is 80. Score is high in uncertainty avoidance, which result in her avoiding uncertainties that maintain good codes of belief and behavior and are intolerant of ideas. Both Malaysia and Middle East at the medium score of 50 for the masculinity. Changes in culture have influenced daily life, which by their understanding of gender roles, male-female values and interaction and habits of risk-taking and values of individuals, especially young generation.
So now we are going to discuss on our data finding based on this research analysis. So we found that there is four elements that related to the Hosford cultural dimension theory for power distance. So first is treatment equality. We found that most of our interviewees saying that they've been treated equally. So this is because most of the construction project in Middle East been handled or managed from those who are non-local, such as from Germany, from Australia, European. So these people have their own standard in construction project management. Next is the organization style. So most of our interviewees saying that Middle East implemented hierarchical organizational style. So only one interviewee saying that they apply flat organization. So if relates to the Hosford theory dimension for power distance, it's saying that Middle East accept hierarchical order in which everybody have to do works without further justification. Next is the dependency towards superior instruction. We found that half of the interviewees saying that they have high dependency towards superior instructions um, in doing their works. Only one interviewee saying that they have lower dependency towards superior instruction because they have their own scope of work and also power limitation. They have to complete their task or solve the problem within their own limitation of power. If the issues have to go with the higher level of management, then they will pass with their superior or higher level. And another one interview is saying that the dependency towards superior instruction is depends on the work experience that they have. And lastly is the behavior of project manager in problem solving. All of the interviewees saying is that their manager are applying mono solving style. So basically the project manager have a ultimate authority in making decision over the subordinate. And sometimes the subordinate ideas is not being heard and it's hardly to propose things to their superior because their superior hard to accept it even though there is a benefit but sometimes it's hard for them to accept. They just want to follow what has been written, what as per as been agreed before.
Right, so I'm going to cover on individualism and collectivism. Alright, according to Brew and Winnick, individualism demonstrates that the greater emphasis is put on achieving personal goal. The self-image is of an individual. In this context, this can be defined as I. Meanwhile, collectivism implies the interest and well-being of the group are greater importance, where the self-image could be defined as a we. When comparing with Malaysia and Middle East, Malaysia have ranked 26, meanwhile Middle East 37, and both of these countries have known as collectivist culture. Although throughout the interviews, most of them have highlighted the same thing on the working culture, completing their given tasks and share success to enhance their skills and responsibility. Besides, it is showing their commitment to themselves and organization. Here, individualists have displayed less attachment than collectivists to their culture, current work situation. Therefore, in owing to their greater relative emphasis of self over culture, individualists are less burdened by the structure of their societies. Their relations are more temporary and flexible. They feel more freer to live and find more fitting situation. Secondly, on balance between work and life, it is reflect that individualists would value the achievement of workplace success more than collectivists would value their social bonds such as a family. In fact, they have clashed with the family goals and needs. Individualists may experience less pain or conflict about the achievement goal. Next, all the interviewees have agreed that Middle East construction players prefer to work independently. It shows that they want a freedom to make a choice and pursue self-interest. Therefore, individualists would have greater preference than collective for separate work arrangement. Besides that, when we talk about self-motivate, Middle East construction player driven by fitting in, fully fulfilling and establish responsibility and become more receptive to the meaning that those around the individual make. In short, rather than the interdependent self collectivism, the independent self will be appear to build and preserve a positive sense of self. On the other hand, when comparing these two, it enhances their positive characteristic, downplaying their negative characteristic. We do expect these individualists to exhibit their self-enhancement tendency.
Now I would like to explain the findings of the interviews for the uncertainty avoidance. Based on the interview, the result that we found are most of the Middle East construction players are organized and planned. It shows that they have significant relation between leadership orientation and work security represented by indicate both factors that act uncertainty mitigation mechanism. In fact, it is supported statement said people in Middle East have developed a survival skill rather than relying on order and law to survive and adverse circumstances they have encountered in recent decades. Besides that, Middle East construction players are comfortable with ad hoc issue if it is on his task and benefit to project or else they would avoid any ad hoc issue. It is indicated that the organization trying to adapt to the level of avoidance of uncertainty. Such findings show the executive are advised to provide structure and order for their subordinates to minimize the uncertainty and ambiguity. Therefore, organization have provided with sufficient written rules and procedures in these cultures to inform their workers precisely what organization expects. In addition, by giving subordinates specific and concise instruction in performing their jobs, could make them less nervous and reduce any uncertainties. The interviews also agreed to say that the Middle East construction players do feel nervous and tense at work due to the presence of project owner, work pressure and priority of the workload. Besides, they aim to make life as predictable and manageable as possible. Therefore, it is reflected that there is cultural tendency for organization to achieve the best in most conservative decision. Their intention could enable them to become more accessible to various ideas and methods, but having a reasonable small and organized option or solution may be helpful. In terms of breaking the rules, interviewees agreed that Middle East construction players do not like to break the company rules. due to strict labor laws. However, some of them like to break the rules based on the flexibility they have, which is not going to affect them in another way that will be against policies of the organization or government guidelines. Therefore, it shows that they have high uncertainty avoidance that indicate low tolerance for uncertainty, ambiguity, and risk-taking through strict rules and regulations. In fact, through strict behavior codes, laws and regulation, rejection of unusual views, and a belief in absolute reality, the reject ambiguity aim to minimize the possibility of such circumstances. Lastly, in terms of cultural differences, the Middle East construction players are easy to adapt to project team members from a different country with different cultures, and another said otherwise due to communication with language barriers. It shows that they're trying to adapt with different working cultures, and communication plays an important role. Besides, being more culture sensitive is essential for organization to be stronger and more productive collaboration. Most significant, it helps organization to minimize misunderstandings system that may arise because of cultural differences in the way people make choice, talk in another language, or do their jobs.
Alright, next for masculinity versus feminism. All the interviews agree that Middle East people tend to prioritize for money and material comfort first. It shows that acquisition and the means to acquire belongings are valued by materialistic people more highly than those who are low materialism do. They do agree that Middle East construction players prefer to have work-balance life. The work life could influence on the employee satisfaction, turnover, productivity, organization participation, and absence. Therefore, in the terms of both organization efficiency and occupation health, the work balance is important in the construction industry. The most consistent predictor of the work-life conflict among the construction workers, particularly those who are working on site or in a project office in a long and inflexible work hours. Besides that, all the interviewees prefer not to working extra hour unless it is being paid as overtime salary. However, there are factors, most notably the current shortage of qualified construction expertise and workers have contributed to this trend. Some of the factors behind the shortage are below and show the view to better understand the decline in the construction productivity. Next, based on interviewee viewpoint, there are several reasons that every workplace want its employer to be more competitive, and rightly so. No business can ever hope to grow and profitable without competition, whether it be external or internal. Competition essentially define what a business is capable of and help to differentiate it that specific field from the others. However, while cooperating with a competitive mindset, they feel more energized and work with focus to complete their project and task. Besides that, in order to solving any conflict through negotiation, and this Middle East people have indicate depends on the context of conflict faced by them. However, there has been a lot of study have done in the previous form of style of conflict management, which negotiation is approach that aim to prevent, mitigate, and resolve a conflict. Lastly, there is no specific gender in working as superior or colleague. However, they have highlight how their perception of women as individual not really belonging in the construction. It is a part which shows that masculinity is forced and upheld. Feminine could give an example of what women are perceived as likely to contribute to. The woman's abilities to listen and bring a softer skill such as peacekeeping and politeness are mentioned here.
Next, for the conclusion and recommendations, the Middle East people takes the differences of working culture into account when making decision or working in a project. They have a global perspective. They find the suitable solution or strategy for each area, as well as encourage the organization to adapt for better communication to ensure the project successfully. The cultural aspect of Hosford have included in implementation of cultural management planned by recognizing top management with subordinate behavior and solving any discrepancies or issue. And lastly, the project manager shall build a cooperative atmosphere to harness the strength of participants on either end of the result of differences will improve despite the potential conflict within multicultural teams, and it enhance employees and corporate performance. So that's all from us. Thank you so much.